Now, beginning in the 16th century, we have a series of individuals who will come along and challenge the medieval worldview. Now, there were many people who contributed to this, but for purposes of saving time and just getting the main points down, we're going to look at three individuals: Copernicus, Galileo, and then Newton in the 17th century. So let's start with Copernicus. Copernicus was Polish, and he was a Roman Catholic priest. He doesn't have any technology, but he likes to climb to the top of the spire of his parish church and just look at the heavens just with his eyes. And he concludes that the universe operates this way. So he concludes that the geocentric way of looking at the world, popular in the Middle Ages, is in error, and instead of the sun revolving around the earth, the geocentric worldview, he suggests this, the heliocentric worldview, that the earth revolves around the sun. Now, he is operating in the 16th century, so we'll place him in this decade, the 1540s, and he was afraid that if he published or made his views known, he would face persecution, so he never published. But after he died, in the 1540s, his major works would be published, and one of them is on the revolution of the heavenly orbs. So that's Copernicus. He is a hero in Poland. There's a huge statue of him on their major thoroughfare, and around him in the plaza, around his statue, are all the planets of our solar system, and depicting the heliocentric worldview that he championed. So that was Copernicus, operating in the 16th century. Next we have Galileo. And we'll place him in the 17th century, in about the middle of the 17th century. He started his work much earlier and began to publish, and he is operating in the country of Italy. So he is kind of at the tail end, I think, of a movement that featured an artistic renaissance as well as a scientific side of that renaissance, and all of that was supported by the Medici family in Florence. And to this day you can go to Florence and you can go to the Galileo Museum. So I've had a chance to go there, and it was quite a thrill, because inside that museum you can see some of the technology that Galileo used. So the big advantage that Galileo had over Copernicus is he's got this technology. And so he's got a telescope. And he discovers, for example, that the planet of Jupiter as moons. And he supports what Copernicus had argued prior, the heliocentric view, that the sun is the center of our solar system and planets like the Earth revolve around it. Now, he thought he could publish and present the new view in a dialogue format where someone from the medieval worldview, the geocentric view, is having a dialogue with someone who believes in the new heliocentric worldview. He thought he could get away with that, but when he publishes, he gets in trouble and he's brought in front of the Inquisition run by the Roman Catholic Church, and he is asked to recant his views. And because he's an old man, he doesn't want to be excommunicated. He does recant and basically lives the rest of his life under house arrest. But that's Galileo, Italian. He's got technology, and so he advances with experimentation, this new way of looking at the world, the heliocentric view. Now, number 3 is Newton. Sir Isaac Newton operated in the 17th century. He publishes in the 1680s his primary work, and he takes all the ideas that have come before, and he provides a synthesis. So, one of my greatest thrills is going inside of Westminster Abbey in London, and you can see the sarcophagus in which Sir Isaac Newton is buried. He's one of the heroes of English history, one of the greatest scientists of all time. Buried next to him in the floor is Charles Darwin. Now, here's the gist of what Newton argued. The universe operates on natural laws. Okay, so the universe operates on natural laws, and the one that we associate with him because of the famous story of the apple falling on his head is, of course, gravity. Now, humans can discover the natural laws by using, now there's a lot of different ways we could answer this. We could say experimentation, observation, that type of thing, but we're going to use this word. Reason. And this is going to become the hallmark of the next thing we're going to talk about, which is the Enlightenment. So, what did Copernicus, Galileo, and Newton have in common? Here's one thing. They didn't believe something simply because tradition said it was so. They didn't believe something simply because it was in a textbook. They didn't believe something just because religious authority or a professor said so. They didn't just write down what the teacher said and accept it. They had this in common. They all wanted reasonable answers. They wanted to explore why things were the way they were. They didn't accept the status quo. And they called into question what they'd been taught, and they came up with some new ideas. And that's why collectively they're three of the most important individuals in what we call the scientific revolution.